On Christmas morning, just after sunrise, Colonel Marcus Calder was walking toward the main gate of Fort Harwood when he saw a young man stumbling through the checkpoint. For a moment, his mind rejected what his eyes were seeing. The figure moved like someone whose body had forgotten how to hold itself upright, swaying with each step, one arm clutching his ribs. Then the gate guard shouted, and the young man looked up. It was Marcus's son, Liam. Marcus whispered, already crossing the pavement at a run. 19-year-old Liam collapsed into his father's arms the moment he reached him. His face was a grotesque mask of swelling and deep bruising. One eye completely shut, the other ringed in purple, his cheekbone distorted, his jaw hanging at an unnatural angle. His coat was soaked through with blood. When he tried to speak, crimson bubbled between his teeth. "Dad," the boy choked out. "Dad, Danielle's family, they all." His voice broke off into a gasp of pain. He didn't need to finish. Marcus lifted him without effort, the old instincts of battlefield extractions snapping back into place, and carried him to the base hospital. Even as he ran, his mind automatically cataloged injuries with the icy detachment that came from decades in special operations. Fractured orbital bone, broken jaw, cracked ribs, concussion, possible internal bleeding. This was not a fight. This was a coordinated attack. Inside the trauma bay, doctors and nurses swarmed Liam, cutting away his clothes, attaching monitors, preparing scans. Marcus stood near the wall, his blood-stained hands clenched behind his back, forcing himself to stay silent as the medical team worked. He had led raids in foreign cities, navigated hostile compounds, dragged wounded teammates through gunfire. Yet none of that compared to the helplessness he felt watching his son's battered body on the treatment table. An hour later, a doctor returned with the first update. "Colonel Calder, your son has a fractured jaw, a broken cheekbone, several rib fractures, and a likely concussion. We're stabilizing him. He'll need sedation for a while, but he's going to live." Marcus nodded once. "Do whatever you need." When they finally moved Liam to a private room, sedation softened the lines of agony carved into his face. Machines beeped steadily around him. The quiet should have been comforting, but it wasn't. Marcus sat beside the bed, staring at the rise and fall of his son's chest, feeling a pressure in his own lungs that had nothing to do with the cold air outside. Then his phone vibrated. The number was unfamiliar. At first, he almost deleted it, but the thumbnail image froze him. It showed Liam's car parked in front of a house Marcus recognized too well. Danielle's house. His ex-wife's house. Marcus opened the message and pressed play. The video was 17 minutes long, shaky, but clearly filmed through a second-story window. It began with Liam stepping out of his car, holding a bag of carefully wrapped gifts. Marcus watched the recording with a tightening jaw as Danielle appeared on the porch with her husband, Brent Lowell, and several relatives. They smiled. They hugged Liam. They invited him in. The moment he crossed the threshold, someone locked the door behind him. The audio picked up Liam asking why, his tone shifting from confusion to alarm. As he turned, people began emerging from different rooms, brothers, cousins, nephews, even two women, forming a circle around him. 17 in total. Brent threw the first punch. Marcus watched, stone still, as his son tried to defend himself, tried to reason, tried to reach the door. None of it mattered. The group beat him in rotations, landing strikes with terrifying efficiency. Kicks replaced punches once he fell to the floor. At one moment, someone held Liam upright by the jacket while another drove a knee into his ribs. And in the corner of the frame, Danielle stood with her phone raised, recording everything. Her laugh cut into the audio, sharp, delighted. "That's what you get for acting so proud," she said from behind camera. "Your dad's fancy bass doesn't mean anything here." The camera zoomed in as someone's boot struck Liam's jaw. Blood smeared across the hardwood floor. His attempts to crawl away only made the beating more vicious. When they finally tired of it, they dragged him to the door, shoved him outside, and dumped the gifts after him. Boxes burst open on the steps, crushed under shoes as the door slammed shut. The video ended. Marcus watched it again, cataloging faces with the same precision he once used to identify targets in enemy safe houses. Brent, the nephews, the brothers, Danielle, every angle of their expressions, every detail he could use. On the third viewing, he no longer felt the cold, controlled detachment of a soldier studying footage. He felt something far older, far deeper. He opened his phone and called a number he hadn't dialed in years. Judge Advocate General's office. A voice answered. Major Hernandez speaking. This is Colonel Marcus Calder. Marcus said, his voice calm in a way that didn't match the heat in his chest. I'm sending you a file. I need complete identification on every person in it. Records, addresses, history. I need it quickly. Yes, sir, the major replied cautiously. Is this regarding an official investigation? It will be, Marcus said. He ended the call. A nurse entered a few minutes later. Colonel, Sheriff Lowell is here. He says he's family. Of course. Harold Lowell, Danielle's father. Brent's protector. A sheriff by title, a bully by nature. Send him in, Marcus said. Harold stepped into the doorway, but didn't cross the threshold. Heard there was an incident, he said. What happened to your boy? He was attacked by 17 people in your daughter's house. Marcus replied evenly. I have the video. Harold's expression flickered before hardening. I'm sure there's a misunderstanding. Get out, Marcus said quietly. You threatening me, Colonel? I'm telling you to leave before I forget where I am. For a long moment, neither man moved. Then Harold backed away. You better watch yourself, he muttered. My family doesn't appreciate accusations. Marcus didn't respond. He returned to Liam's bedside, placed a steady hand on his son's arm, and let the plan forming in his mind settle into something cold and final. The law would not touch the Lowells, but he would, and he would not miss. By the time dawn reached Fort Harwood, Colonel Marcus Calder had already made up his mind. He had spent the night sitting beside Liam's hospital bed, watching the slow rise and fall of his son's chest, listening to the rhythm of medical machines filling the silence. The video replayed behind his eyes with painful clarity. The circle of bodies, the blows landing one after another. Danielle laughing as if the suffering of a 19-year-old were entertainment. Every detail pressed deeper into him, sharpening into something cold and unwavering. Marcus had spent more than 2 decades shaping soldiers into instruments of precision. Some men taught tactics. Others taught discipline. Marcus taught survival in the dark places of the world, how to move unseen, how to dismantle a threat from the inside out, how to make an enemy vanish without leaving a footprint. The men and women he trained were among the most skilled operatives in the country, and they owed him more than they would ever admit aloud. That morning, Marcus walked into the advanced operations classroom where 32 of the military's finest recruits sat waiting. Army Rangers, Navy divers, Marine recon specialists, Air Force tactical operators. They had been in his course for 6 weeks, learning infiltration, intelligence gathering, urban extraction, skills meant for missions the government never publicly acknowledged. They stood when he entered, a sign of respect he rarely demanded. At ease, Marcus said. His voice sounded unfamiliar to him, steady, quiet, stripped of every emotion except purpose. He didn't begin with the day's lesson. Instead, he connected his laptop to the projector and pressed play. No introduction, no explanation. 17 minutes of brutality filled the room. He didn't watch the screen. He had memorized every frame. Instead, he watched the faces of his students, the way their expressions shifted from confusion to disbelief to controlled anger. Not one of them looked away. Not one of them spoke. When the video ended, the silence was absolute. That, Marcus said finally, is my son. He let the statement settle, unembellished, unbreakable. His name is Liam. He is 19 years old. He is studying engineering. He has never been in a fight in his life. He visited his mother on Christmas Eve and was ambushed by 17 people in that house. The woman filming is my ex-wife, Danielle Lowell. Her husband and extended family took turns attacking him. Nobody moved. Even breathing seemed to pause. Marcus clicked to the next slide. 17 faces appeared on the screen with dossiers beside each one. Criminal records, property ownership, employment, routines. He had compiled the information through the night, working with the efficiency of a man who had built a career deciphering enemy networks. That, Marcus said, is who did it. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The sheriff of Moore County is Danielle's father. He has already attempted to interfere. The local prosecutor, the judge, several officials in the county, many of them have ties to this family. The law will not hold these people accountable. They will claim self-defense. They will say Liam attacked first. They will say anything necessary to walk away unscathed. He turned back to the room. So, I am offering an extra credit assignment. Purely voluntary. No one shifted in their seat. Make them disappear, Marcus said. All of them. No bodies. No noise. No connection to this base or to me. You will operate in pairs. You will plan your own methods. You will report only through encrypted channels. Total operational freedom. He expected hesitation. He expected questions. Instead, every hand in the room went up. 32 arms raised simultaneously, without a second of delay. Marcus felt a brief, sharp ache deep in his chest. Not joy, not pride, but a recognition of a loyalty he had cultivated without meaning to. Outstanding, he said. He handed out sealed folders, each containing target information, satellite maps, potential extraction routes, financial data, and weak points. This is no longer training, Marcus said. This is a live scenario. You will coordinate through secure relays only. If any of you are compromised, you cut ties immediately. You are ghosts. You were never there. You never saw these people. You do not know me beyond formal capacity. A hand rose at the back of the room. It belonged to Sergeant Mason Hale, one of the most capable operators Marcus had ever trained. Rules of engagement, sir. Marcus held his gaze for a long moment. Your discretion, he said. Use whatever means necessary. But remember, fear is more effective than force. Some of these individuals should disappear entirely. Others should return, just altered enough to break the structure of the family from within. Make choices carefully. He dismissed the class. When the room emptied, he remained standing alone, staring at the faint reflection of his son on the darkened projector screen. He had crossed a moral line the moment he asked for volunteers, but he felt no tremor of doubt. The Lowells had made their choice when they cornered a 19-year-old and treated him like prey. Later that afternoon, Marcus drove to a bar on the outskirts of Pinewood, 3 miles from the Lowell property. He didn't go to confront the family directly. Not yet. He went because he knew one of them, Brent's brother, Derek Lowell, drank there nearly every evening. Marcus walked in, ordered a beer he didn't intend to drink, and sat at the far end of the counter. Derek stumbled in 40 minutes later, already unsteady, laughing loudly about teaching that college kid a lesson. Marcus listened without lifting his gaze, letting the words confirm everything the video had shown. He waited until Derek went to the restroom. Then Marcus followed at a measured pace. Inside, he locked the door behind him. Derek barely had time to turn before Marcus pressed him against the wall by the front of his shirt, not striking, not shouting. The man was too drunk to fight back effectively. He clawed uselessly at Marcus's wrist. Marcus leaned in close enough that Derek couldn't look away. You hurt my son, Marcus said softly. And for that, your life, as you know, is already over. He released Derek without further violence. The man slumped to the floor, gasping for air, fear overtaking his earlier swagger. Go home, Marcus said. Tell your family what's coming. He left the bar without looking back. By the time he reached the base again, an encrypted message was waiting on his phone. Eyes on targets 3 and 7. Awaiting approval. Marcus typed a single word. Execute. The operations had begun. The Lowells had written the opening act. Marcus would write the ending. The first disappearance happened less than 12 hours after Marcus gave the order. It was clean, swift, and executed like a textbook scenario. Ryan Holt, Brent Lowell's brother-in-law, ran a small construction company and had a habit of answering emergency calls at all hours. At 2 in the morning, he received a frantic message from his foreman claiming a gas line rupture at a job site. The message was authentic enough to bypass suspicion. Ryan grabbed his boots, left his sleeping wife in bed, and drove straight to the half-finished strip mall outside town. The gate hung open. The foreman's truck sat in the lot, driver's door ajar. Ryan jumped out, calling his name. No answer. No gas smell. just empty scaffolding and the echo of his own footsteps. He barely had time to take out his flashlight before two shadows detached themselves from the darkness. They wore balaclavas. They moved with precision. Ryan was on the ground before he even understood the danger. Zip ties tightened around his wrists and ankles with practiced efficiency. A gag silenced his protests. He was lifted, carried, and placed into an unmarked van. Inside the van, one of the operatives asked quietly, "Where do we want him?" The other replied, "Colorado." Contact lined up. By sunrise, Ryan Holt was on his way to a remote labor site connected to illegal logging operations, a place where paperwork didn't matter and no one asked where a new worker came from. His truck was left behind, his phone discarded miles away. The Pinewood Police Department filed him as a missing person by afternoon. One target down, 2 counties away, another operation unfolded just as silently. Cody Mercer, Brent's nephew, worked as a mountain guide, taking wealthy clients on week-long hunting trips. He left early on December 27th, expecting to meet a group of clients at a trailhead. Instead, he saw flashing lights behind him. A police cruiser. He pulled over, rolled down the window, expecting a routine check. The 2 officers approached confidently. Uniforms flawless. Badges reflective. Voices steady, except they were not officers. Minutes later, Cody was unconscious from a fast-acting sedative. His vehicle was abandoned in a park-and-ride lot. He woke hours later in the dark, hooded, his wrists bound, the air around him cold and stale. When the hood was removed, he found himself inside a concrete root cellar of an abandoned Virginia farm property, stocked with a camping lantern, bottled water, and enough food for 2 weeks. His screams echoed into nothing. The door was welded shut from the outside. The assignment wasn't death. It was erasure. 2 targets down. While the operations unfolded smoothly, Danielle, who had filmed the beating, was unraveling. She had heard from Derek, who described Marcus's warning in shaky, frightened fragments. She had also spoken to Ryan's wife, who was hysterical about his disappearance, and Cody's girlfriend, who reported he hadn't shown up for his guiding job. The more she tried to contact Marcus or Liam, the more desperate she became. Neither answered. Her father, Sheriff Harold Lowell, brushed off her fears with gruff reassurance. "Coincidence," he said. "Young men disappear for a few days all the time. Probably nothing." But deep inside, Danielle felt something tightening around her like a noose. By the time she drove to Fort Harwood, demanding to see Liam, she was shaking. The MPs at the visitors' gate blocked her path. "You're not on the approved list, ma'am." "I'm his mother." "Yes, ma'am. You still need authorization." When she tried calling Liam again, the hospital refused to transfer the call. She sat in her car outside the gate, replaying the video she had filmed, watching Brent's fist connect, watching her son fall, watching herself laugh. Only now, the laughter burned like acid. Shame, fear, and regret churned in her stomach. She had wanted to put Liam in his place, to hurt Marcus in a way that didn't leave her fingerprints. She had miscalculated. Badly. Her phone rang. An unknown number. "Mrs. Lowell," said a calm female voice. "This is Deputy Marshal Andrea Cross. We need to speak with you regarding your involvement in an assault." Danielle straightened. "I'll only speak to my father. He has been removed from the case," the voice replied. "You filmed a violent attack. We require your presence at the federal building in Raleigh tomorrow at 9 a.m. That doesn't make sense. There's no federal. The victim is the dependent of a federal military officer. The video was transmitted across state lines. It qualifies as a federal matter. You have the right to counsel." The line cut. Something about the call felt wrong. Too rehearsed. Too precise. Danielle tried calling her father, but he didn't answer. She tried Brent, who told her to stop panicking. Across Pinewood, Sheriff Lowell sat in his office, staring at a county map with 17 pushpins marking addresses of family members who had been at the Christmas Eve beating. 2 pins now had red excess over them. Ryan, Cody, missing. Harold knew the timing was no coincidence. He knew the threat Marcus represented. But when he called Fort Harwood, he got the same answer every time. Colonel Calder had not left the base since Christmas morning. Hundreds of witnesses could verify it. Harold slammed the phone down, breath shaking. He had survived 20 years of policing because he trusted his instincts, and every instinct told him the same thing. Marcus was behind this, and he wasn't done. For more disappearances followed within days. Tyrone Hayes vanished from a gas station while buying a soda. Security footage showed him entering the store, but never leaving it. A married couple, Randall and Lori, broke down on the highway. A tow truck arrived, hooked their car, then disappeared with them inside. Marcy, Brent's sister, left her hospital shift, walked to her car, and stepped into 18 seconds of unexplained camera static. When the footage resumed, she was gone. And Keith Brady, the cousin who had kicked Liam repeatedly, was found zip-tied to a highway sign, wearing only a hospital sheet, a note pinned to his chest confessing his role in the attack. He survived, but mentally shattered. 7 targets gone, 10 left. The Lowells were panicking. Emergency meetings, whispered arguments, wild theories. But Marcus's operatives were already watching them, silently recording their desperation from a rooftop 3 houses away. "Should we move in now?" one operative whispered. "Wait until they separate," the other replied. "Easier to take them one by one." "Do you think they understand what's happening?" "No, but they will." Every operation was airtight. Every disappearance was clean. Marcus's design was unfolding perfectly, and the Lowells were only beginning to understand that the nightmare had just started. The new year arrived in Pinewood like a storm with no warning. Quiet at first, then destructive in ways no one could predict. By January 1st, 7 members of the Lowell family were missing. One had been found barely coherent, and the rest were scrambling for a plan. Sheriff Harold Lowell called an emergency gathering at Brent and Danielle's house, forcing every remaining relative who had been present during the Christmas Eve attack to attend. The moment Marcus's 2 operatives saw cars lining the street, they adjusted their position on a rooftop 3 houses down. One held a directional microphone. The other aimed a long-range camera through a half-open attic vent. Inside the living room, 20 frightened faces looked to Harold for answers. "This is Calder," Harold announced without preamble. His uniform was rumpled, his eyes bloodshot from days without sleep. "He's using military connections to pick off our family one by one. I can't prove it, but we all know he's behind this." Fear rippled across the room. Some whispered. Some cried. Brent stood abruptly. "Then why can't we stop him?" he demanded. "We go to the media, say he's using soldiers for personal revenge. Once it's public, the army will have to investigate. And when they ask why he's taking revenge," Danielle said quietly. Her voice trembled. "What do we tell them? That we beat a 19-year-old? That I filmed it?" The room fell silent. Harold's jaw flexed. "We say it was self-defense. There were 17 of us," one nephew muttered. "Who's going to believe that?" Another voice rose. "We leave. Tonight. Split up. Make it harder for him." Harold shook his head. "You can't hide from trained operators. They track people across continents. You think they can't track you to another town?" "So what then?" Brent snapped. "Just sit here until someone grabs us?" Harold hesitated, then said the words that showed just how desperate he had become. "We fight back. We find whoever Calder is using, his students, soldiers, whoever, and make them stop. Pull strings. Bribe someone. Threaten someone." No one believed the plan would work. They clung to it anyway. From the rooftop, Marcus's operatives recorded the entire conversation. "Should we move now?" the younger operative asked. The older one checked his watch. "No, we wait until they separate. Much easier that way." The Lowell family left that night in scattered clusters. Most went home. A few stayed with Brent and Danielle. But 2 didn't make it past their front doors. Arnold Ross stepped outside toward his truck and felt a sharp sting at the base of his neck. He collapsed before he could turn around. He woke hours later in a transport container being unloaded at a remote training site belonging to a private military contractor. The men running it didn't ask questions. They never did. Across town, Virginia Hale, Derek's girlfriend, walked toward her driveway. She noticed immediately that her car door was unlocked. She never left it that way. When she leaned in, she saw her phone sitting on the dashboard. The screen lit up with a new message. "Get in the car." She spun to run, But a woman stepped out of the shadows, face covered, stand steady. "I'm giving you a choice," the masked woman said. "Drive where I tell you, or I put a bullet in your spine. You'll live, but you'll never walk again. Choose." Virginia obeyed. They drove for 6 hours, weaving through rural highways in silence. Near dawn, the car stopped at a mountain trailhead. The woman pointed into the darkness. "Walk north until you hit the ranger station. If you reach it by sunrise, you live." "I can't," Virginia cried. "It's freezing." "You should have thought about that," the woman said. "Walk." Virginia made it less than a mile before hypothermia took hold. A ranger found her at dawn. She survived, but the frostbite caused her fingers and toes. She never spoke honestly about what happened. Fear sealed her silence. By the 4th day, Pinewood was unraveling. People whispered in restaurants. Church groups prayed for the missing, unaware that half of them were locked in concrete rooms, buried containers, or isolated compounds across the country. The sheriff's office was overwhelmed, but Harold trusted none of the deputies. Many were relatives, and none could match the precision of Marcus's operatives. On January 3rd, as Marcus expected, the FBI arrived at Fort Harwood. 2 agents, both young, clipped, and polite, sat across from him in a secure briefing room. "Sheriff Lowell has accused you of coordinating the disappearances of 9 individuals," the lead agent said. Marcus handed over documents, timestamps, duty rosters, logs showing he had not left the base since Christmas morning. 300 people can confirm my whereabouts," he said. The agents requested to interview his students. Marcus agreed immediately. They interviewed 15 at random. Every operator provided identical accounts of training schedules, barracks checks, and routines. Base security footage corroborated every word. After 4 hours, the agents looked defeated. "We'll be in touch," the lead agent said finally. Marcus nodded politely. They would find nothing because there was nothing to find. Every operative remained technically on base. Their digital footprint supported it. Their movements off-site left no trace. Meanwhile, Pinewood continued to fracture. On January 5th, Brent Lowell stepped outside for a cigarette. His brother heard a muffled sound, rushed out, and found only the cigarette burning on the driveway. On January 6th, Derek vanished from his pawn shop. The security footage showed him behind the counter, followed by 10 seconds of static. When the camera returned, the shop was empty. 11 targets gone, 6 left. That night, Danielle broke. She drove to Fort Harwood again, sobbing, yelling to speak with Marcus. When the MPs restrained her, she screamed that everything was her fault, that she had filmed something unforgivable. She was admitted to the psychiatric wing of the base hospital. Marcus visited once. She stared at the ceiling, drugged and trembling. "Are you doing this?" she whispered. "Are you making them disappear?" "I haven't left this base in weeks," Marcus said. "But it's you. Somehow it's you." He didn't answer. Her final question followed him into the hallway. "Is Liam going to be okay?" Marcus paused only long enough to say, "No, because of you." That same night, 3 more Lowell relatives vanished simultaneously from Harold's heavily guarded home. Tranquilizer darts, power outages, silent extraction. When Harold woke the next morning, he was alone. A laptop sat on his table, already powered on. 3 video feeds streamed live. Brent pacing inside a container, Derek rocking in a concrete room, and 3 terrified relatives locked in small holding cells. A single message appeared. "Turn yourself in for corruption. Confess to covering up the assault on Liam. Resign immediately. If you do, they live. You have 24 hours." Harold stared at the screen, his hands shaking. He knew Marcus meant every word. And for the first time in his life, the sheriff understood what real fear felt like. Sheriff Harold Lowell stared at the laptop screen as if it were a doorway into a nightmare he could not wake from. Brent pacing in a metal container, shouting until his voice cracked. Derek curled in a corner, rocking silently like a broken child. 3 more relatives, Harold's son Gavin, Brent's sister Natalie, and Derek's mother Edith, locked in separate sterile rooms, terrified but alive. A new line of text appeared across the screen. "You have 24 hours. Confess the corruption. Reveal the cover-up. Resign. Do it and they live." Harold's throat constricted. His home was silent, every light off, every room empty. Only he remained, conscious, uninjured, and forced to choose between disaster and destruction. His hands shook hard enough to rattle the table. He tried to speak, but no words came. Then his phone rang. Marcus called her. Harold answered with a trembling breath. You did this. Prove it, Marcus said calmly. His voice held no triumph, no rage, only quiet certainty. You kidnapped them, Harold said. You want me to confess so you could destroy my life. You destroyed your own life, Marcus replied. You covered up crimes for years. You enabled your daughter and her husband. You protected people who hurt others for sport. Now you answer for it. They're my family, Harold whispered, voice fraying. And Liam is mine, Marcus said. You didn't care about that on Christmas Eve. A cold silence followed. Harold gripped the edge of the table as the weight of his decisions pressed in on him. You think hurting my family makes you righteous? He finally said. I didn't hurt your family, Marcus replied. I simply stopped them from hurting anyone else. What happens next depends entirely on you. What do you want from me? Harold asked, defeated. A full confession, Marcus said. Corruption, obstruction, your role in covering up crimes. You will resign. You will accept prosecution. When your son and the others are safe, you'll know. You're asking me to destroy my legacy. No, Marcus said. I'm asking you to tell the truth. Harold closed his eyes. You're a monster. No, Sheriff, Marcus said softly. I'm a father. There's a difference. The call ended. For a long time, Harold didn't move. The cold air of his kitchen seemed to thicken, pressing against him like a physical force. He thought about his badge, the decades he had worn it, the corners he'd cut, the favors he'd traded, the people he'd intimidated to maintain his authority. He had always believed he could balance moral shortcuts with good intentions. Now the truth was laid bare. He wasn't being punished for a single night. He was being judged for a lifetime. At dawn on January 7th, Harold walked into the Moore County Courthouse carrying the laptop, a stack of documents, and the defeated posture of a man who had run out of options. He requested an immediate meeting with the district attorney. The DA, a woman who had known Harold for 20 years, frowned as she flipped through the documents he handed her. Harold, what is this? My confession, he said hollowly. Bribery, evidence tampering, intimidation, covering up crimes, including the Christmas Eve incident. And you expect me to believe. My family is being held, Harold interrupted. If I don't confess, they die. The DA stared. Who is holding them? Harold gave a broken laugh. You wouldn't believe me even if I told you. The DA weighed her options, then quietly shut her office door. What do you want? Immunity for Gavin, Natalie, and Edith, Harold said. They're not guilty of anything beyond being related to us. They don't deserve to die. After hours of negotiations, a deal was made. By noon, Harold had signed a full confession and resigned as sheriff. By 4 in the afternoon, the 3 relatives were found at a rest stop in South Carolina, alive, confused, and with no memory of how they got there. Medical staff found traces of sedatives, but no injuries. The others, Brent, Derek, Arnold, Ryan, Cody, and the rest were not recovered. Officially, they remained missing. Unofficially, they were scattered across the country, each held in a different form of living purgatory where no lawyer could find them. Harold wasn't given long to dwell on that reality. He was arrested the same evening and transported to federal custody. The community that once respected him now avoided his name entirely. His downfall was complete. 3 months later, from a prison phone booth, Harold requested a call to one person. Marcus called her. His attorney arranged it. When Marcus answered, Harold didn't waste time on courtesy. I know you did this. Prove it. Marcus repeated, the same calm tone as before. You'll never admit it, Harold said. But I know, and that knowledge is eating you alive. No, Marcus said. It's eating you alive, which is exactly what you deserve. Harold's voice cracked. Why didn't you just kill us? Because death is mercy. Marcus said. You needed to understand helplessness. To feel what my son felt on that floor, what I felt watching that video. You needed to know that you could beg and still not be heard. You're twisted. I did what any father would do if he had the means, Marcus said softly. And you tried to bury the truth because it was convenient. Harold didn't respond. He ended the call because he couldn't bear hearing the truth spoken aloud. That night, he lay awake staring at the ceiling of his cell. 3 weeks later, he was found dead. The official report listed suicide. But one inmate, a hardened man with a military tattoo and a quiet demeanor, was transferred the next day without explanation. He had once been one of Marcus's students. Meanwhile, Liam healed. His jaw rewired, his eye regained vision, and his ribs slowly mended. By February, he returned to UNC, throwing himself into coursework, determined not to let the assault define him. He never asked Marcus for details about what happened to the Lowell family. He didn't need to. It was enough to know his father had stood beside him when no one else would. Danielle spent 6 months in psychiatric care. Her laughter on the Christmas Eve video replayed in her nightmares until she woke screaming. She never recovered fully. Marcus continued teaching at Fort Harwood. His newest class produced some of the strongest operatives the program had ever seen. Among the special operations community, an unspoken rule formed quietly. Never touch the colonel's family. The consequences were not worth surviving. Spring arrived slowly at Fort Harwood, creeping across the training grounds in soft greens and warmer winds. By April, the base was busy again. New rotations, new recruits, new operations. To an outside observer, Colonel Marcus Calder appeared unchanged, steady, disciplined, respected by everyone who passed him in the corridors. But those who worked closest to him sensed a deeper stillness beneath his usual composure, a quiet that had grown heavier since Christmas. The Lowell family no longer dominated the news. Their disappearances had become cold cases, swallowed by the bureaucracy of missing person files and jurisdictional confusion. The only official closure came from Sheriff Harold Lowell's confession and sentencing. Everything else remained unresolved, a puzzle the public would eventually forget. Marcus did not forget. He didn't dwell on it either. He simply carried it with the same unspoken weight he carried from a dozen deployments. One more truth folded into the silent archive of soldier's life. By contrast, Liam thrived. He returned to UNC at the beginning of February, moving gingerly at first, his jaw still healing, his ribs aching when he breathed too deeply. But his determination was unmistakable. He attacked his engineering coursework with a focus he'd never shown before, as if survival had clarified what mattered. His professors noticed. His friends noticed. Even strangers sensed the quiet resilience beneath his softer demeanor. What Liam did not talk about was Christmas, not the beating, not the hospital, and certainly not the disappearances that followed. Whenever someone asked after his mother or Brent or the relatives who had once crowded the Lowell house, Liam gave the same answer. I'm letting the law handle it. He knew it wasn't the whole truth, but it was the one he chose. In April, the university held graduation for winter completing seniors. Liam wasn't graduating yet, but he attended for a friend. Marcus and his wife Amelia accompanied him. It was the first time Liam had asked Marcus to join him at a public event since the assault, and Marcus didn't take the gesture lightly. The ceremony took place outdoors. Folding chairs aligned in perfect rows. A brass band played a cheerful but slightly off-key march. Families waved signs and shouted names. Marcus sat beside Amelia and took in the scene. The bright sky, the hopeful noise, the warmth spreading across the field. A normal world. A safe world. A world Liam could step into without fear. At the end of the ceremony, Liam found them in the crowd. His face carried a hint of the boy he had been before Christmas, but something steadier too, something forged. Thanks for coming, he said, hugging Marcus. Really? Always, Marcus replied. I know you did more than you'll ever admit, Liam said quietly. I don't need the details, but thank you. Marcus met his son's eyes. You never have to thank me for protecting you. I do, Liam said, because I know what it cost. Marcus didn't respond at first. He placed a hand on Liam's shoulder, steady and warm. All that matters, he said, is that you have your life ahead of you. The rest stays buried. Liam nodded. The moment held, a silent pact between father and son, and then broke gently as Amelia pulled them toward a photo spot beneath a row of blooming trees. That night, after Liam returned to campus, Marcus stayed awake longer than usual. The house was quiet, Amelia sleeping peacefully in the next room. He sat at his desk, the glow of a single lamp casting shadows across old commendations, framed mission patches, and the crisp paperwork marking another class of elite operators who would soon graduate under his command. 14 of his students had executed operations that would never appear in their records. They would move on to units across the military, carrying no proof of what they had done except the knowledge of their own competence. Among operators, stories traveled in whispers, and already Marcus was hearing the beginnings of an unspoken reputation forming around him. Not about vengeance, not even about the disappearances, but about loyalty. A simple rule: if the colonel stands for you, the world itself will hesitate to stand against him. Marcus didn't cultivate this legend. He didn't deny it either. It was simply another consequence he couldn't undo, as inevitable as the scars his students carried from the battlefield. Around midnight, he stepped outside onto the back deck. The air was cool, the moon bright enough to cast faint silver lines across the yard. Marcus leaned on the railing, listening to nothing but the distant hum of training aircraft. For the first time in months, he allowed his thoughts to return to the men and women who had beaten Liam. He didn't picture their faces clearly anymore. He didn't replay their screams or their panic. Instead, he remembered the video, Danielle standing in the corner, filming her own son's suffering as if it were entertainment. He wondered whether justice and vengeance were truly different things, whether the line between them mattered at all when a father watched his child bleed. Some nights, the questions kept him awake, not with guilt, but with contemplation. Tonight, he felt none of that, only certainty. He would do it again, without hesitation, without regret, because some acts were unforgivable, and some sons were worth everything. 3 months later, the Army sent Marcus to observe a new joint training program. His reputation, official and unofficial, had grown far beyond Fort Harwood. Commanders requested his guidance. Units asked specifically for his assessment. Young operators whispered that training under him meant being shaped into something sharper, stronger, and infinitely more capable. Marcus accepted the responsibilities without ego. He spent long hours in the field, instructing, correcting, pushing students to become the best versions of themselves. Many of them never knew his personal history, but they sensed something in him, a boundary they would never dare cross. When a trainee once asked why discipline mattered more than strength, Marcus answered simply, because discipline protects the people you love. Strength only destroys the people you hate. The room went silent. The lesson ended there. Years later, Liam would become a successful engineer. He would marry, build a family of his own, and teach his children about their grandfather, the decorated officer who trained elites and honored his duty with unwavering resolve. He would never tell them about Christmas Eve 2024 or the months that followed. Some stories were not meant to be shared. Some were meant to be buried deep, just like the people who caused them. On a warm evening in late spring, Marcus stood on the training field, watching his newest class navigate a complex urban simulation. Their movements were crisp, silent, efficient, confident. As he observed them, he felt a rare sensation of closure. The world would never know what had been done. The Lowells would never harm anyone again. And Liam was safe. For Marcus Calder, that was more than enough. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.